Hi, my name is Joe Alter. I'm the creator of Hair and Fur, which is also known as Shave and a Haircut on some other platforms. Um, I'm going to show a few slides from a master class that I taught for Autodesk this summer at SIGGRAPH. They've been kind enough to let me share a few slides with people for free so that they can get a taste for Hair and Fur inside 3ds Max 9. A few basics of hair and fur is when you create hair from a mesh, you're actually creating a series of guides, which are shown here in yellow, and those get interpolated into however many render hairs you wish or you set by count. Um, the number of guides is dependent on the complexity of the geometry, and the number of render hairs is dependent on what you set for count in the rollout. Um, Once those interpolant render hairs are created, additional displacements are performed on them, such as frizz and kink and mult and splay. Pretty much anything that you find in the rollout is a displacement. Another way to create hair is to create a series of splines and then create hair. In this case, the hair will actually interpolate in between the geometrical splines that you've created. The order of the splines that you create is important, as the hair will interpolate in the order that it finds the splines in its list. Looking at a basic example here, we're going to create some hair and fur. Going to limit the selection here a little bit. And now we're going to go under Dynamics Properties and go into Live Mode. Live isn't meant for creating animation. It's meant just for getting a feel for how the dynamics are working. Whenever you do that, it's always a good idea to also turn on guide display, which I've just done here. All the dynamics happen on the guides. You'll notice that these render hairs are sticking out, quite a ways from the guides. So even if your guides are intersecting properly, your render hairs may not be. This isn't a bug. This is just the way it works. If you would like to create, zillions of guides and do dynamics on those, be my guest. But your computer just won't handle it. So what we're doing here is we're adjusting dynamics properties such as stiffness and while we're in live mode, we're shaking it around just to see how that's affecting things. One of the reasons why I mentioned that guides and render hairs are a different concept is it's probably the most frequent question that I get asked is how come my collisions aren't working, and then I end up looking at a scene file and realize that they've put a lot of displacement on their hair like this character has, and they have very loose hair. Well, natural hair, if it has a lot of displacement such as frizz or kink, wouldn't actually be this flexible. So the first thing that you generally want to do if that's a problem for you is raise stiffness so that it's something a little more realistic than wet noodles. Or turn your displacement down. So a couple of possible solutions to a common question. Some of the displacements that you can do here are we have in the middle, on the left here we have frizz, which you can actually see can be used to create some clumping effects. We have frizz tip is being adjusted here. you can adjust the frequency of the noise that's being used to bend the hair this way and that, and you can adjust the amount, which is actually the frizz amount. It basically bends the hair around the root. It's a little bit oversimplified way of discussing it because it also bends and flexes with the guide itself. But that's one way to think of it. Another type of displacement shown here is kink, which you can actually use to create some fairly loose curly hair. I wouldn't want to try to create a tight coil with it, but it's also very useful. I use it quite a bit, even if the hair isn't particularly kinky. I usually dial a little bit of it in just to get the highlights kicking around in a more realistic way. Hair is never perfectly combed, even if you've combed it a million times. There is some variation there in the shape of the hair as it moves up and down the length of the hair. The next type of displacement here is called molt. What molt does is for actually every one hair that would have been grown, it grows n number of hairs. So if you have molt set to 10, it's going to grow 10 hairs for every one hair that you have set in count. And then each of those hairs will be grown in the same exact place, except will be offset by other displacements such as splay root, splay tip. This is a high degree of splay tip. This is in a low degree of splay root. This is a high degree of splay root and a low degree of splay tip. This can be very useful for things like grass, where you have the tip splaying out. Very useful for creating a wet appearance in the hair where you want it very clumped. Another concept is segs. The shading for shave happens at the edge of each hair segment. So if you want finer shading, you're going to have to dial up segs a little bit. That's something important to keep in mind if you want to get a really tight highlight or a really precise shadow. Passes is another concept where shave and hair and fur actually creates an entirely new render of the hair for n number of passes with a different random seed. What this accomplishes is not some kind of a blur or something like that. You're actually, if you have passes set to 3, you're actually rendering 3 times as much hair. You're just using different random seeds so that when you composite it together, you get this nice bleeding of light into the hair volume without any of the complexity or overhead of a deep shadow. You'll find that in addition to getting this nice soft look on the hair itself, it actually improves the look of the shadows as well. So the hair shadows will get this softness as well that you can't get from a one-pass Z buffer. As you probably are aware, hairs don't need to be hairs at all. They can be, with using instances, you can grow daisies or blades of grass or whatever you want to grow. And wherever it would have grown a hair in the shape and size that it would have grown that hair, it now grows your modeled instance. There's several different ways of rendering with hair and fur. One is with the buffer render, another is with the mental ray render as hair primitives, and then there's the buffer with mental ray, and then there's third-party buffer with third parties such as V-ray. But the buffer render, one of the most important settings that you have is fuzz. You'll find the fuzz setting on the light source inside Max 9. We also support point lights and all kinds of other lights, but there's still a hair and fur rollout where you set fuzz. Here we're setting fuzz. It's basically a shadow precision. What you'll find is if you have fuzz set quite high, it blends very well with um, lighting schemes such as sky dome and uh, uh,